G'day, Ben from Melbourne here, and today we're going to do the unthinkable, not featuring any Australian music at all. It's going to be all American stuff. It's because the great vinyl Richie, which I'm sure you've all seen, did a video a little while back of what he called the best American bands ever, or of all time, or something like that. And it was bands, not solo artists or such and such and the such and such, but bands. And I thought, what better time to jump on this and feature what is great about the US? Some positive vibes in these unsettling times. Whoa, some shit's gonna go down over there, and it's gonna affect us all. So put on your orange suntan cream and try and blend in and keep your head down, or fight back. That's about as political as this gets. One last caveat. This is a list of my taste. I've also kind of catered it to not feature a lot of the same stuff I've seen in other people's videos. So of course there's going to be big holes, because why double up? It's boring. Let's do something different. Show a few other bands. That's why I like to watch other people's videos. It's interesting when I find out about things that I don't already know. So don't be giving me your bullshit about, oh, I can't believe you left that. Oh, why wouldn't you have this? Oh, carrying on with all that shit, all right? Be nice in the comments. Don't mind if you say, oh, I love this band as well, blah, blah, blah. So that's cool. And one other thing, if I have left out something, it's for that reason, or I probably don't fucking like it, or have it. Anyway, another thing, talk about Caveat City, we're at 2 minutes in, is this is also a reflection of my age. So the 90s and indie rock and underground music were a big thing for me. So there's going to be some shit where you'll be like, what the fuck? How could you pick that and not pick the Birds? Anyway, let's do it. Funkadelic. Already been done. So is Parliament. So who are you going to choose? And this came to mind, which I think is pretty interesting, because they started off as a vocal group and then they got tripped out and funky towards the end of the 60s, and that is the Temptations, of course, with their great batch of records with Psychedelic Shack, the classic All Directions, and then of course Cloud 9. Yeah, just going to be whipping through showing covers, not pulling shit out or any of that too, because there's a lot of records. So next up, country music. Love a lot of country music, but a lot of solo artists. So I don't think anyone picked this. So I'm going to go for the mighty Burrito Brothers with their two Stone Cold classics, with Burrito Deluxe and The Gilded Palace of Sin. Just brilliant records. Of course, you all know about Graham Parsons and his time in the Byrds and International Submarine Band and his brilliant solo records. Awesome stuff. Next, one, if you know them, you know them, and if you don't, you don't. The biggest export from Clackamas, Ohio, the mighty garage rockers, Dead Moon. Around throughout the 80s and 90s, I think they pulled the pin about 10 or 15 years ago, and then had Pierced Arrows, which was basically Fred and Tootie with a new drummer. Sadly, Fred's no longer with us. Fred will always be legendary because of he was in the great 60s garage rock band, the Lollipop Shop, but heaps of other cool things like Zipper in the late 70s and the Rats. Legendary, great garage rock band. These are super duper lo-fi. Incredible records, but man, I was lucky to see them live a whole stack of times, and that was the way to see them. Let's change gears. Hip hop, De La Soul, the flower power of hip hop with two stone cold classics. These guys brought in a whole different vibe, which was completely different to all of the gonna pop a cap in your ass bullshit going on the other coast. West Coast? Yeah, West Coast. Love NWA, love all that shit. But this was funky as shit and just great, and very sampler-delic as well, like back in the days before they were getting their asses sued. And so there's a whole shitload of samples on these, but used incredibly creatively. Now another one, which is, you know 'em, you don't, which I reckon are the best band from America in the last 20 years, and definitely one of the best live bands you'll see. And that's the OCs, or OCS. The OCs. OCs, the OCs. You might think I'm having like a brain aneurysm now, but I'm trying to do all the different ways they've spelt their name over the years. Started off as a weird kind of folky acoustic reaction to John Dwyer's previous band, the Coach Whips, which was like in the red garage rock band. Weird effects and stuff like that, noodling strange songs. But then the garage rock come back, and he put together a proper band by this stage with Petey Dammit and Bridget Dawson. How's that cool cover? Yeah, quite disturbing in a lot of ways. So this is a garage rock classic, and then it just went full-on spasmo experimental time with Orc, and the records around this time and after it, just a completely different beast. The band, 2-drummer lineup, bass, guitar, and then this one, which is I think the latest one, there's one after this, but just so unbelievably consistently rockin', experimental, and good. Next, a band from the way back who are still going and are so consistent, and lucky enough I saw them live a couple of times last year, and that is the mighty Sparks. Started off like an art rock kind of band, really interesting stuff. Strange arrangements, all because of Ron Mayall's bizarre mind and bizarre, hilarious lyrics, all sung in that beautiful, elastic voice by Russell Mayle, his brother, who seems to be able to sing whatever's put in front of him and doesn't mind what the lyrics are. So they were art rock, and then they preceded a lot of electronic sounds. I think this is the one which was produced by Giorgio Moroder, and this was 1979, I think, way before the whole explosion of house music and electronic stuff and DJ culture in the 80s. Sadly, just too early, but as good, and influenced all those people. And then in the 90s, the Comeback record, which is awesome record, gratuitous sax and senseless violins. Fantastic record with, When Do I Get to Sing My Way, which is a fantastic single, and yeah, it says a lot about Sparks. And continuing to go, concept album, Little Beethoven. This is amazing record. Just songs like The Rhythm Thief, Why Are All These Bands So Angry? I love that, because I do listen to a lot of angry music, it occurred to me. But A Suburban Homeboy, you have to hear that for a laugh as well. And just last year, the newest record, The Girl Is Crying in Her Latte. Still fantastic stuff. They've become like a live band again with a mix of electronic and art rock. Amazing. Now the opposite to a maximalist sound, to a minimalist sound of slowcore champs, possibly invented it. Low. Yeah, sadly lost Mimi Parker this year. The Alan Sparhawk and Mimi Parker husband and wife team have had a couple of bass players in their time. Just so minimal, so quiet. Never seen a show where you can hear a pin drop and the crowd just shut up. Amazing. And then they're masterpiece. Things We Lost in the Fire, incredible record. And then just when you there's a bunch of records in between this and the last one, and then like they bring the noise on this one, like more distorted rock and guitars, but still at a snail's pace. I think this is the one that Robert Plant covered 2 songs off. I think it's Silver Rider and the other one, Monkey. That's it, the first track. Brilliant record, and then right up to the end, always pushing the limits of the sound of the band. This one's called Hey What, and by this point they're really interested in digital distortion and sounds like that. Some people probably will not be able to handle this because of it pushes the digital distortion to the extreme, to the point where it's almost like an electrical storm, and they're not, even though they have the 2 most beautiful harmony voices you'll hear, they're happy to like distort the crap out of them on this. Amazing band. So sad to see they're no more because of Mimi's no longer with us. Now let's get loud again with Washington DC's finest, the Bad Brains, one of the best and most talented hardcore bands to come out of America. Also can be like lightning speed and dexterous, but also just had that brilliant feel to be able to slip into reggae influenced beats and not sound ridiculous like a lot of those punk bands did. These guys were the real deal. Amazing band. Still with the punk. Another hugely influential band, the Dead Kennedys. Don't have to tell you much about them. Everybody knows. They were like, you know, Dead Kennedys, Black Flag, probably the big 2 of that era of late 70s, early 80s hardcore. Just amazing, really in-your-face political stuff, and musically amazing as well. Kind of within the same ballpark, but we bring the bass to the forefront. And that is the Minutemen. Yes. With the punchline, double nickels on the dime. This one's probably like their, you know, Husker Du's, what's that called? You know, the one that I nearly said, which is the double album magnum opus. This is an amazing record. Amazing band. Like, again, fast, hardcore, but also slow it down. The big, huge bass, almost funky at times. Really interesting stuff. Again, quite political as well. Brilliant band. And the whole Jam Econo from Mike Watt way of operating as a band. Look it up. Brilliant band. Great doco about them too, called Jam Econo. And then the band that brought guitar solos back into indie rock, made them cool again. And that, of course, is the mighty Dinosaur Jr., the original lineup, back together. I think they've released as many albums as they originally did now, or maybe one more, and still really friggin' good stuff. Ear-piercingly loud if you've ever seen them live, to the point of stupid, where Jay's guitar just cuts through the front house, which, how the fuck do you mix that? But great band, classic band. Next, let's get Swamp Hair with Jeffrey Lee Pierce and the Gun Club. What an amazing band. One of the best debuts ever, Fire of Love. If you like the Cramps and things like the Scientists, you're going to love this band. Also, Jeffrey Lee Pierce was a lifelong friend of Kid Congo Powers, who was, of course, also in the Gun Club. Didn't appear on the early album because he got an opportunity to join the Cramps before the Gun Club even had a chance to record themselves. But yeah, so legendary bands he's been in. So Gun Club with Jeffrey Lee Pierce, then the Cramps, of course, and then also he was in the Bad Seeds, Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds, that is, for a few years. Like, incredible band, the Gun Club. If you don't know them, get on it, especially if you love the Cramps and that kind of stuff. Then, a controversial one for all you old motherfuckers who just like classic rock. There isn't a guitar in sight on this record, or a real drummer. Not even a vocalist. And that's right, it's DJ Shadow with his amazing debut record, introducing DJ Shadow, a completely sample-based record, come out in the 94 or something like that. This completely rearranged my mind and just opened me up to sample-based music. And this is like a masterpiece. Anyone who comes around my place and says, "Oh, I don't like hip-hop, I don't like electronic music or whatever," put this on and it blows their mind. Like, this is turntable music to the extreme. It's very musical. Very musical. The guy has got amazing taste, and they're so creative. The samples on this and the way this is put together are incredible. So that's the debut. Then there was a comp of his 12-inch singles called Preemptive Strike, and then The Private Press, which was his second full-length album. Sad to say, he went to shit after that. Right, geez, got a lot to get through. Now, let's go indie rock with the mighty Yo La Tengo. Been going since the 80s. Yo La Tengo with new wave hot dogs. Sort of changed a lot over time. They were a bit jangly to start with. Went full on indie guitar wildness in the 90s with this album, Painful. Yes, Painful. Probably painful if you've lasted this long. One of the best records they released, I reckon. I Can Hear the Heart Beating is one. This one, they introduce a lot more instrumentation, different sounds, experimental. Fantastic record. Oh, I picked up some more hip-hop. Go make a cup of tea, Grandpa. You can't not have A Tribe Called Quest. Incredible. These guys brought the jazz into hip-hop with great jazz samples, amazing vocals by Q-Tip. Just got that voice, you know what I'm saying? And what's the other dude's name? This is terrible. He passed away too, so that makes it even worse. But these are two of the finest hip-hop records you will ever hear. And the whole, it's kind of like they're still pushing the whole idea of African, embrace your African American identity and that kind of thing, but in a positive vibe way, not like Public Enemy, who are brilliant, but in a completely different way. They're kind of if you're gonna compare spiritual leaders, I suppose, PE were more like the Black Panthers, and these guys are more like Martin Luther King with the message, if you know what I'm saying. More indie rock. These are the big four for me. Well, one of the big four of indie rock, and that's Guided by Voices. Had many phases, starting in the late 80s. Super lo-fi, but Robert Pollard just grew up on a diet of English 60s music, and you can hear it in his voice. He even sings in an English accent, even though he's from Ohio. The 90s stunner when they signed to Matador, and that thing stuck to it. The big studio album, Isolation Drills, and then I think this is close to the last one, if not, and still killing it. Then they broke up and got back together, and they've released a shit ton more records, which are good. I can't keep up with them anymore. They're I think they out King Gizzard. Say King Gizzard a lot, but you know what I'm talking about. Next, some primal blues, punk, garage rock from the late 80s, early 90s with awesome gories. This band, just so influential on all garage rock and primal blues that came after it. This is super primal. It's so bare and wild and also catchy and just good fun. And I followed Mick Collins through all that, his other great bands like the Dirt Bombs and King Sound Quartet and all of those. Blacktop's another good one. Now, let's go back to DC for a moment with Fugazi, one of the most amazing live bands I've ever seen. Hell of a show when I saw them and Shellac many moons ago. This is the two extremes of Fugazi. This is the start of the hardcore loosening up, what emo actually used to sound like, or before it turned into that friggin' sensitive bullshit that it is now. They may as well put on their cardigans. And then still had the punk energy and ethics, but become a lot more experimental with their sound and weren't afraid to bring in all new, different influences. Just In on the Kill Takers, killer record. Still in Punkland, the Mighty Bikini Kill. Amazing band. Kathleen Hanna with a voice that could like strip paint off the walls. Very political, very like a feminist point of view, very in your face, and by right should be, like with the bullshit that she'd had to put up with. Let's not forget Toby Valley, who was also a very important member of the band, and I think she formed the Casual Dots and the Frumpies and other great bands that came along. And who am I forgetting? Kathy Wilcox, of course, on bass. Now, the noise rock really in the 90s pulled me in, and there was none better than the Jesus Lizard. Oh my God. This is pummeling stuff, heavy on the bass and drums. Mac is one of the best bass players ever. And David Yao, oh my God, what a madman. Gurgling, screaming, sometimes musical in there. To see them live is just, I know that they're back together. I cannot imagine that he could punish his body that much anymore. Well, at least I hope not, because he probably won't live long if he still performs like he used to in the mighty Jesus Lizard. Next, indie rocker, Champs. One of my favorites. Another one of the big four, of course, and that's Pavement. This stuff was my bread and butter back in the day. Just cannot get enough of Pavement. Stephen Malkmus's awesomely obtuse, impenetrable lyrics. Started off super lo-fi with Slanted and Enchanted. Like they're catchy as well, as weird as that can be when it's also very noisy and lo-fi. But then, as they went along, their production got better at sounding in that, but they still remained awesomely obtuse. Brilliant band. And now, a man we lost earlier this year, hugely influential, Steve Albini and the mighty Big Black. God, there's too many of these records to show, but you know who I'm talking about. Took the whole punk attitude and turned it on its head. Didn't have a drummer in this band, had a drum machine, which made it even more intense and pummeling, razor sharp guitars, and just lyrics that would worry a lot of parents, let's put it that way. And just, again, amazing band. And that's what I'm talking about. Parents don't like that shit. Well, mine didn't. Next up, the best band from Seattle in this person's opinion, and that is, of course, Mudhoney. One of the earliest from the late 80s, and also one of the best. And they're still together and still continuing to make great music. Just the best. They're probably more punk than a lot of the other Seattle bands who are more influenced by metal and Sabbath in there. And in their later years, they've also added some really nice 60s psych sounds into their punk groove. Mark Arm, Steve Turner, amazing. Speaking of garage punk, who I think are the inventors almost of it, well, the most consistent during the course of an album, and that is the Sonics. We wouldn't have half of this garage rock culture without bands like this from the 60s. If you have not heard the Sonics, have a listen to songs like Strychnine and what else? What's the other one? The Witch, and of course, what else but Psycho. You will not believe that is a 60s voice. It is out of control. These dudes, they've even got a sax and it still sounds punk as fuck. Speaking of punk as fuck, because they were completely different to the other CBGB heads. Suicide, a vocalist, a synthesizer slash keyboard, which was also a drum machine, and that was it. And apparently, from all reports, they were scarier than any other band playing CBGBs at the time, getting right up in people's grill. This is probably the first album's probably the more confrontational one. Yeah, like if you listen to Johnny, is it Johnny or no? It's Frankie Teardrop. Sorry, that is some intense shit. But then the next record, which had beautiful stuff on here, yeah, like Diamonds, Fur Coat, Champagne, Sweetheart, like just amazing band. And of course the single I'm forgetting, Dream Baby Dream. It's hard to believe like that a band can work at both ends of the spectrum so beautifully. Now, the band that invented power pop but also had that Birds jangle that influenced countless bands in the 80s who played like underground awesome indie rock, like when R.E.M. were small, and the Posies and bands like that. And that is, of course, the mighty Big Star. What can you say which hasn't been said? Classic band. And also like the, you know, the typical story of the shoulda beens but never was. Amazing. I think only Jody Phillips, the drummer, is still with us now, but these first two records are incredible. And there's kind of a third one, which is, I don't know, I really enjoy it, but there's just so many different versions of it. So, but these two, solid gold jangle power pop, beautiful stuff. Now, the Modern Lovers, maybe only one record where they were a proper kind of band. Yes, Jonathan Richman wrote all the songs and was the lead guy, but every band's a bit like that. This is like got a very young Jerry Harrison too, who'd go on later to play in the Talking Heads, of course. This is kind of like that weird interim moment. I think it was recorded in 1973 or 4, but it didn't come out until 75, 76. By John Cale. How many records have got his name on it that are awesome proto-punk records? But anyway, this is like kind of in between. You know, you had your Velvets and the Stooges and MC5 and New York Dolls, and then it seems to the punk story jumps to you know, the Ramones and the whole CBGB scene and Patti Smith and Talking Heads and television, and then it jumps across the pond to the UK with Sex Pistols, Damn Clash, and everyone always fucking forgets that the Saints were first in 1976 before all those UK motherfuckers, and they also had I'm Stranded out in 1974, but we're getting sidetracked in a big Australian bias right now. But these guys were kind of jam-packed in the middle of all of that, but they're the connecting fibers. Let's go with fibers. So yeah, like Pablo Picasso was never called an arsehole. Not like you. Roadrunner, She Cracked. Amazing. And last and most controversial, that this would be number one, but fuck you if you don't like it, the greatest indie rock band of all time, just about, and that is the amazing Archers of Loaf. North Carolina dudes come out, I think this one, Icky Metal, come out in 93, and this shit just blew my mind. This, when I talk about indie rock, this is indie rock. It's got guitars out the arse. It's got that indie rock which used to have that grunt and aggression and smart lyrics and interesting song structures, bit of experimentation but catchy. It's just got everything. They're the best band ever, and they also developed in a really interesting way as they went along. The great 10-inch EP versus the greatest of all time. Then a bit more of a gnarly one with VV. Compilation of all of their singles and B-sides and a bit of live stuff. All of it's good. And then they go for a bit more cleaner sound, no less brilliant as far as the ideas department, just trying production techniques which they hadn't had access to before. Amazing record. Scenic Pastures should have been an indie rock hit. And then the last album, which is kind of like an Eric Bachman solo record, because it really did lead to the kind of things that he did later on, especially the actual song White Trash Heroes. This is a great record. And then they did the unbelievable that never happens. They reformed a couple of years ago and actually released a fucking great record. Normally that doesn't happen. They get back together, most bands do a tour, which is great. They sound great. Then they get in the studio and they either try and sound contemporary and it's terrible, or they try and recapture their youth and it's terrible. This just hits the sweet spot of, there's no doubt it's Archers of Loaf, but they don't sound like they're trying to be 21 or 22 anymore. This is Archers of Loaf at the age they're at. Still rocking, still writing great tunes. As what comes with age, a bit more reflective too. Gonna have to cut it off right now, because this is a big fucking video. If you lasted, thanks for watching. That's my best American bands of all time. See you in the next one.